Hello and welcome to Feminist Frequency's Star Trek podcast. Today we are diving into Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episodes 8 and 9. I'm your host, Anita Sarkeesian. And real quick, before we get started, I know this has been a tough year for everyone, but we were super proud to have been able to open our games and online harassment hotline to support the mental health and emotional well-being of folks who make and play games. If you can help us continue these efforts, by donating, that would be great. I know how to do a pitch. Just visit feministfrequency.com/donate. All right, go do that and then come back and listen to us because I've got some awesome guests today. We are welcoming back clinical psychologist Ali Mattu. Hi.
Hi, Anita. Good to be here.
He's treated anxiety at Columbia University. He's building free mental health support at loop.co, seen on Netflix, BuzzFeed, HBO, co-host of PBS's Self-Evident, and the creator behind The Psych Show on YouTube. And hello, Bobak Ferdowsi. This is his Star Trek bio, because he needs us to know how cool he is. Let me proceed. You may remember Science Officer Bobak Ferdowsi from Star Trek Ongoing Issue 48, deity as an anthropologist who has made first contact with more species than anyone in the fleet. Holy shit.
My gosh.
But most of the time, he is a fault protection engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which means any disastrous situation you can imagine for your spacecraft, he's already imagined and found a solution to. Warp coil malfunctioning, swap to the redundant unit, probe ceases to communicate, onboard logic will exhaust all the communications paths possible. He previously has worked on the Mars Curiosity mission, Cassini, Europa Clipper, and now NISAR?
NISAR.
Is that how we're pronouncing this?
Yeah.
Great. I can't pronounce anything. All studying Sector 001. Hello.
Thank you.
You sound so cool.
I think that was worth it, personally.
That was so worth it.
It's totally worth it.
So excited right now.
Okay, so fun fact that is not fun or an interesting fact at all, but I like putting puzzles together because it like gives me something to do that doesn't involve any actual thinking. And my neighbor had a puzzle that was all of the space things that you send to space.
Spacecraft.
Spacecrafts. Thank you. This is going to be a great episode. Anyways, it's like since the 60s or 50s or whatever when we started doing this until like, I don't know, the mid 2000s. And it's the worst puzzle. It's fucking ugly. It's super hard to do. But I feel like I now have like at least a slightly better understanding of just how much shit we've thrown into the sky.
I mean, it's not the adjective I would use to describe it, or noun, to be honest, but pretty proud of that stuff.
I'm just saying, as I was very frustrated with this puzzle, I was also just like really impressed. I have very limited space knowledge, so it was like, cool. You do cool things.
Did you have a favorite quote, shit we send into space from the puzzle?
No, I don't remember them that well.
Oh, okay.
There was a very colorful one earlier in our history, but that might just be, the photo of the puzzle. I don't know, whatever. This puzzle sucks. I'll post a picture on Instagram for everyone.
I mean, I think the obvious choice I was going to say for Star Trek has to be Voyager.
It has to be
right?
Voyager. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it has to be.
Because that is the best Star Trek season, right?
Oh, we were talking about the movie.
I thought we were talking about
picture.
the series. No, and it's the furthest, right? It's the furthest spacecraft we've ever sent.
That's right, yeah.
Cool. God, the things I learn. Anyways, we're not here to talk about real life. We're here to talk about fake space life. Because that's what Star Trek is. It's our fake fantasy space life.
There's references to real life in these episodes, into real science in these episodes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I actually heard that they like officially brought on science experts to this season specifically, especially with some of the dumb shit that they did in earlier seasons that were not real science. Because that's not mycelial networks. Like that's magic mushroom. Like, come on, y'all. That's not. That was goofy as fuck. But
yeah, season 1 and 2.
So before we get into these episodes,
season 1 and 2 of Discovery were the only seasons since like the original series that didn't have a ongoing scientific advisor. And even with the original series, Gene Roddenberry consulted with scientific advisors throughout that, but just not for season 1 or 2 of Discovery. That did not happen.
Why? Why would that not happen? I find that so peculiar.
I think it's a part of everything that made season 1 and 2 so funky. Is there's so much behind the scenes drama about who's running the show, about who's writing the episodes, and I think things are kind of straightening out a little bit now.
Yeah. It does feel like it's landing. Well, actually, that's a great. Thank you for that segue, because I do want to just get like roughly, how are you two feeling about this season?
I'm so impressed. Honestly, the episodes, really the first half of the season so far, it feels like it was written for 2020 at some level. Yeah. Like, not that they could have anticipated the circumstances we'd be in, but the kind of the optimism, the rebuilding, the finding your people, that kind of stuff feels like a message that's so on point for this year. That it's kind of been tremendous at some level. I that first couple episodes, I was like very emotional throughout them. I think they've consistently been very good, but I mean the first couple, like I was like, teary eyed, and when Burnham finds the Federation guy who's been manning his outpost for some time, that was such a powerful moment for me. And I was like, oh, I get this. So.
I think we're having a bit of a mind meld, because that's like word for word what I have written down in my notes.
No, I'm so sorry.
No, I like mind melds. These are good things. The distance and isolation, exploring the unknown, and really trying to figure out what's happening that you see in those first few episodes. It just it so resonated with me and the pandemic that we're living in, and also the visuals and cinematography. It was this like beautiful desolation that we saw in those first few episodes. So I absolutely loved it. And this idea of being in the future and having programmable matter and all of this stuff is happening, and yet people are still so isolated and so separated, and the Federation is it doesn't have that sense of connection anymore. That also felt so 2020. So I've really loved this season. At the same time, Anita, when you asked me to come on these shows, I always pick a later episode to join, because I feel like I'm going to join like when everything is really happening. And I always end up picking episodes like right after like the best stuff has happened and right before like the even better stuff is going to happen. It's always this lull. So I feel like these episodes we're in right now, it's a bit of that lull.
Yeah, that's true. As I've said on the cast a bunch of times, I like this season is grabbing me in a way that the first two didn't. Like the first two felt like a slog, and I was like, why the fuck do I have this podcast? Like I don't even want to watch this show. And like two, I was really trying to like find something redeemable. And this one, I can sincerely say that I have enjoyed several episodes, right? Like that I enjoyed the larger arc. I think that like really, really, I don't know, Michael, I just never liked Michael, really. Like, I didn't think that she situated well. I was always, like, kind of conflicted, and I wanted to like her. But this, I think taking them out of all of the constraints of what is expected of a Star Trek show and throwing them off into the ether of the future or whatever, like, allowed a little more space for storytelling and emotion. And I think the show was really lacking sincerity and connection in a way that I want from this kind of thing. And it does, it reminds me of Voyager in a lot of ways, because Voyager was a show about a crew that was lost in space, and you had to get emotional with it. You had to confront the intensity and fear and grief that came with it. And so I don't know, maybe I just like to watch people suffer, but I think it's making that this team a lot stronger. And it's making our resonance with them a lot stronger. So I'm here for it. Also, yeah, these episodes aren't the best that we're about to talk about. I mean, look, I actually enjoyed 8, but as I was saying that to Ali before we started, I was like, he's like, I'd love to hear like why you liked it. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even remember what it was about. Like I have to go back and read in my notes, but like 9, I will talk about, I really didn't like. And when we can get into that. But so yeah, let's get into the episodes. Ali, would you mind reading the recap for episode 8 that we pulled directly from their website because we're lazy and this is how we do it here?
Love it. One might say lazy, another might say efficient. Episode 8, The Sanctuary. Burnham and the USS Discovery crew traveled to Book's home planet to help rescue it from Osira, the formidable leader of the Emerald Chain. Meanwhile, Stamets, who doesn't suck as much in season 3 anymore, and Adira continue their search for valuable information on the origin of the burn.
Excellent. I love that. I feel like you should be on like a D&D like role-playing live stream.
Now, one of my biggest self-care things has been doing Star Trek Adventures this year.
Ooh.
I've never done any kind of role-playing game. It's basically a Star Trek role-playing game, and I play a half Andorian, half Betazoid female first officer, and it's been like one of the best parts of the year.
I love that.
Just played for the first time this past weekend. I just did a one shot, but it was super fun.
Oh, nice.
I got to get in on this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right. Bobak, will you read episode 9's recap?
Sure. Episode 9, Terra Firma, Part 1. The USS Discovery crew journey to a mysterious planet in hopes of finding a cure for Giorgio's deteriorating condition. Stamets and Adira make a stunning breakthrough with the newly acquired burn data.
Cool.
I have no recollection of what that stunning breakthrough was. I feel like I should probably remember it, but
it was that they figured out where the burn started in like the Verdun Nebula or something.
The Verubin Nebula.
I was like, oh, it would be great to have Bobak on. Like, he's a nerd and also like Star Trekky, but now I'm like, now I just feel dumb because I don't actually know things.
So this was actually exciting
like
for me.
Know.
Because I asked somebody about this. I couldn't get an answer before this. But I am pretty confident that this is named after Vera Rubin, who's a famous astronomer. Mm. And they sort of like created a Verubin Nebula for this sake. But I was poking around at folks who are in and around the Star Trek community. And so Vera Rubin, this astronomer who figured out how galaxies rotate and the rates at which they rotate, passed away a few years ago, but very prominent, of course, astronomer. And so I hope that that's a tribute there, kind of buried within the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, that would be really nice.
They've been doing a lot of tributes to actors and folks involved in Star Trek who have passed away recently. So I gotta imagine that's intentional.
It seems close enough, right? I mean, It seems very close.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think writers are very thoughtful in that way as well. Like it wouldn't surprise me at all. The breakthrough they had is that the data they got from Navarre, they figured out where the burn started, which was in that nebula, and that song that we kept hearing in all of the episodes, they broke it down and they science something, and it turned into a distress signal from like
a Starfleet vessel, right, in the nebula.
Well, yeah, it was what race is Saru again?
Oh yeah,
Kelpian.
It was someone
Kelpian,
from Saru's race,
right?
Kelpians, yeah. Thank you. From 100 years previously. That was like it happened in one scene, and then they immediately went to.
Then we met the Doctor from Doctor Who, and then we went to the Mirror Universe. Yeah, I think I was so blighted by
Carl.
Yeah, Carl. Carl totally was like the 14th Doctor.
Carl was like a caretaker. Like in my mind, I made actually the connection to Voyager and was like, ooh, caretaker type, like very mysterious. The scene doesn't actually represent a reality. That was what actually triggered in my mind when I saw Carl, if that's whatever.
I like that.
His name was Carl.
I was feeling some Q vibes, but I think a caretaker vibe kind of works too. And it's like out in the Gamma Quadrant. That's like hella far away. So maybe there's like another member of the caretaker species out there. That's kind of close to Delta Quadrant, right? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea where these quadrants are.
It felt very like what's the Christmas story where it's like Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future? Like
It's
that's
a
what that
Wonderful
guy
Life?
felt like to
No,
me.
wait, no. Not It's a Wonderful Life.
The Scrooge one, or
Right.
I don't know. I don't know Christmas stories, but like it felt a little. I fucking hated everything that was happening in this episode. And like I know we just skipped to it, but like I'm here for Giorgio, and like she's an enjoyable part of the show. I feel like sometimes her being such an asshole is a little too much for me, and it troubles me. And in this particular, like her sickness right now, I understand like psychologically how she would be so defensive and like, can't show weakness, can't verbally hurting other people in order to protect herself, right? But it's like, okay, enough already. Like you've been with these people for so fucking long. Like life is so different. And I was just having a really hard time watching her be that vicious to the people that has grown to love and care for her. And like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's fine. It's not like a huge criticism, but it was just a little bit like, I don't enjoy this. Like I'm not enjoying, not that you would enjoy it, but I'm not like feeling connected in her illness and in her sickness, which I would normally feel like I'd be invested in because, it's Giorgio.
So there's a lot I love and love less about Giorgio's storyline in Terra Firma. So starting with the stuff I don't like, I've never really liked this Giorgio being in our timeline. I wasn't a big fan of the Mirror Universe storyline in season 1. And that's really carried forward with my dislike of this Giorgio. The Mirror Universe has been super cool as it reflects on our values and our characters and what makes them who they are. We had some great Mirror Universe episodes in Deep Space Nine and in Star Trek Enterprise. Some of the best episodes were Mirror Universe two-parter. And it just showed...
Wait, there were good episodes in Enterprise?
Oh, the Mirror Universe episode? Yeah. I know. There's
sub. That's a good, yeah.
There's sub. And these ones...
Sorry,
Anita, they if you haven't seen it, they like redid the intro sequence to make it like an evil intro sequence. That's kind of fun. It was good attention to detail. But the Mirror Universe in Star Trek Discovery, it just didn't feel right to me because so much of season 1 was this morally gray, murky type of area. And there just wasn't as much contrast between our characters and the Mirror Universe. I didn't really feel like it had much to say and it wasn't fun. It just... so I'm not a big fan of it. At the same time, this episode was giving me some Tapestry vibes, which is like my favorite episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. It's when Q gives Picard an opportunity to go back in time and correct a mistake from his past. So he's reliving his past and making the same decision and different decisions in certain points and all of that sort of stuff. It felt like that, which I like those vibes. I'm interested to see where it goes. I think this series is probably going to resolve a lot. This season feels like it's cleaning up a lot of the mess of past seasons. I'm hoping this is going to clean up the mess of Giorgio. And then the thing I liked the most was like the first 3 minutes of this episode, which reveals that in the future, this prime timeline is aware of the 2009 alternate timeline that was created when Spock went back in time and the Romulan Nero went back in time and all that stuff sort of happened in the J.J. Abrams films. So that's kind of just setting up really interesting stuff. Like we might these different universes might it might get all timey-wimey and wibbly-wobbly on us, Things can kind of interact with each other. So I just felt like this episode it's cleaning up a lot of stuff and trying to set up some more stuff for down the road. And that part I was okay with.
I hated going back into the Mirror Universe. I think I paused this episode 20 times and did other things. I just couldn't pay attention to it. The Mirror Universe sucked the first time around and it sucks this time even more. And it's just, look, and I remember the first time I was like, well, the costumes are cool at least. And sure. Tilly's wig was badass. Captain Killy, fuck yeah, I'm here for this. We've got Michael's terrible wig back. This is an episode I really wish Ebony was on for a hair report, because like there's some hair stuff happening. But like really it almost feels very Star Trek-y in some ways, but I also feel it feels so far away from the Star Trek that I feel like season 3 is actually getting us back to, the spirit it's getting us back to, and that, like, you know, they're Nazis, like they're obviously like it's very very fascist Nazi imagery, like, you know, the hand salutes and all of that, and it just reminds me of like the criticisms we have of like old school Star Trek, where we have these monocultures and they're supposed to represent like a thing in the world, right? They're supposed to represent a people or a population as like one entire planet. And so it just doesn't feel right. And also it's clearly leading us in this direction of like maybe Giorgio's redemption is to save Michael and to not murder her Michael or something. Like if it's that reductive, I'm going to be even more mad, because like, what is the point of this enormously expensive production and taking away from like finding out what the burn data is and getting rid of Osira and all of that stuff to like for Giorgio to go on a little spirit quest of like her consciousness? She could do that off camera. Just throw a couple lines in there being like, I did this thing in the holosuite, you know? Like, come on.
I mean, you're right. But I think it's a good point, though, right? I mean, Star Trek has always had some of those B, you know, like line kind of B plot line things going on. And this definitely felt like a distraction from where, you know, they were just crushing it episode after episode, you know, and then it's kind of like, let's hold on. We got to just take a pause here. We don't have quite as much material, so we're going to fill in the Giorgio story, or maybe it's the pitch for some future Star Trek show with Giorgio as the lead that they're setting us up for as well.
Well, and it's 2 episodes,
right?
Like we have one more episode to sit through this shit.
Yeah, it's
like,
this season.
It's clearly important to them, right? If they're gonna make this 2 episodes, like that's it's of some importance.
This season has felt in many ways what I feel when I watch The Mandalorian, where each episode is its own distinct story, and there's a larger story that's being revealed. And it's been very satisfying in that way. Like I watch an episode and I feel like, oh yeah, that was great. Like I got that little bit of Leonard Nimoy. Saru had this amazing moment. I'm crying because Adil Hussein like looks and sounds like my uncle, and like representation, and like I'm having all these like amazing moments, and I'm having these beginning, middles, and ends of each episode, and I feel very satisfied. I don't feel like I need to watch, like I need to binge the next episode, which is how I feel with The Mandalorian. But this episode, it felt like 3 different stories were at play, and none of them were quite done well. And this is almost exactly, I think, what happened the first time I was on your show, Anita, where it was like a part 1, and we were kind of just like, well, this could be really crappy, or maybe this is going to be really great. Like, I really have no idea what direction this is going to go.
Yeah, totally. Well, okay, let's talk about episode 8 then, which I liked better.
Before we leave that, I want to do this. There's also the science fact. The fun fact in the Mirror Universe is that Giorgio references a Kepler planet, right? Which is the NASA mission. So she represents Kepler 174d. But that's actually real data, right? Based on our science missions. That was it's an exoplanet for us here, obviously, well outside of our solar system. But it's cool. It's cool to like for the. That's a planet around a different star. It's one of the other stars' planets, and so it's a cool reference to to actual findings that we have. I would believe that. By then they might have real names.
Can you just send me a voice memo after every episode and tell me all the cool science things?
Cool science facts. Yes.
Wait, now I need some headcanon here. So what the Mirror Universe? Everything's similar but different and more evil. So our Kepler mission is to explore identify Earth-like planets, right?
Largely just planets. I mean, we're looking for exoplanets in general.
Okay.
Kepler doesn't have necessarily the resolution to say they're Earth-like, right? We can say they're rocky. They're in the sort of the right, what we call the Goldilocks zone from their star to have liquid water. And that's about as far as we can take the data.
So what do you think the Mirror
Right.
Universe Kepler mission is?
Great question. I don't know. What evil science plan was... I mean, unless you're like, we're looking for planets to exploit.
Yes.
Right? Like, what resources can an observatory tell us about that we can then go and, take over or get resources from?
It must have been that.
But I like that they named it after a scientist. Like, I would like to now imagine what Johannes Kepler was in whatever the year 1600, and he was like, when I talk about planets, it's not for science, it's for 400 years from now. When
it's for evil.
That's right.
Evil.
It's got a mustache twirling. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I have some questions. I have two questions. One's like a big picture Star Trek this season question, and one is about this last episode. What has happened with all of their dilithium? Because that has just not been talked about for a while. And when they found the Federation, did they confiscate it all? Did they distribute it? I feel like that was enormously important at the beginning of the season, and now it's not really talked about.
Yeah, I mean, so that theme of it was really important in the beginning of season, now it's not really talked about, is a big part of my criticism of episode 8 as well, which is the sanctuary. So the dilithium, I think it's being hidden in Book's ship, right? So that,
but they take it out of his ship, or did they keep it there? Because they took his ship off to go shoot up Osiris' fleet, right?
There's no way.
I think they took it off of Book's ship in that episode where they did that plan to begin with.
They must have. Otherwise, that's the most risky thing ever.
Yeah, I know. And why would they fly around the world with their dilithium when they could protect it at the Federation, which nobody knows where the Federation is, right? They haven't talked about it, and I feel like it's so precious that it's really weird that they haven't brought that up again. And I'm sure it'll come up again, but what? My other question was, so in this episode, Michael and Book are on the planet, which is called Quasian, and that is Book's home planet. And they see up in the sky Osiris' fleet that have come to attack them and take Rin back. And then at some point, Book looks up and says, "Is that my ship?" Okay, I have a couple of questions here, because first of all, his ship is this big in comparison to the fleet. And also when you cut to the fleet, it's in outer space, right? It's in the darkness of space, not the atmosphere of the planet. So would you really be able to see it?
I mean, I think this is certainly a little bit of a leap there, right? I mean, unless it's a very small planet. But it looked like gravity was about the same as ours. It's going to be a reasonably close-sized planet. They're breathing an atmosphere, so it's not like it doesn't have a lot of atmosphere, and everything is crystal clear from where you are. I mean, I agree. Book's ship doesn't seem that large compared to the space station, and all we see that as a speck of light. So
yeah, so it's fine because it's storytelling, and you got to make concessions for it. But I just kept being I don't think you'd be able to see all of this happening in the sky above you. It was oh, our comms don't work, so now we can visually see what's happening. And I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you.
And I think that moment was supposed to play for humor, and it didn't really. A lot of the emotional moments in the sanctuary weren't working for me. So, Book and his brother, I didn't really feel much of anything with their relationship.
What? Also, if they're brothers, why do they have different accents? I'm totally here for multiracial families and shit. I think that's awesome. This season in particular is so brown. It's amazing, right? There's so many people of color. But that, I was if you were raised as, oh, well, I guess they're not humans. I was about to be as humans, you would. Are they?
No, they're not humans because their foreheads light up when they talk to.
Well, because they're empaths.
Yeah.
Anyways, whatever. Small.
Have you guys considered it's the translator, the universal translator, and it's just applying different accents to people at random?
That would be cool. I kind of love that. Great, new headcanon for all of us. Okay, sorry, please continue with the emotional
Oh no,
disconnect.
I mean, like, there's another reason why their relationship didn't work for me. The battle was like cool, I guess, because I like Book's ship, but whatever. The fight between Book and his brother, Kaim, whatever. I wasn't really feeling too much there. And one of the things that really bothered me is in the very first episode when Book first meets Michael, it's such a big deal that she's wearing this the Starfleet emblem. And then he's like, why are you like, you look like a ghost. Like, I've never seen one of those things in so long. And then here they show up. Michael shows up wearing the new Starfleet emblem, and people are like, oh, Starfleet Federation. But like, wouldn't they have the same reaction? Like, isn't this really far away? And like, so there's just a lot of inconsistencies here that just conflict with how this world was set up in the first few episodes. So I just wasn't really feeling it.
Yeah. So this isn't necessarily this episode. I didn't feel as strongly opposed to this episode as you did, but what I am struggling with is like I'm getting really tired of the naivety of the crew, right? Like everyone is telling them that the Federation is not the same as they were 900 years
Right.
ago. Everyone is saying the Federation can't be trusted. The Federation is the thing of nightmares that you tell children. Like nobody likes Starfleet. Nobody likes the Federation. Nobody's a part of it. They've disappeared like over and over and over again. Yet they're still roaming the world as representatives of the Federation, being like, no, we're actually good. When it's like, well, you might be, but like, you don't actually know what the Federation is anymore. And it's
so
just
the way you're saying this almost reminds me of the United States, so like as a parable at some level. Like you were still the
Sure,
policeman of
yeah.
the world, and then you're sort of saying, but that era of diplomacy and leadership is not what other people feel like they're experiencing at this time. Which is, I had not really put it in that context until you sort of phrased it that way.
I think that's a really good insight.
Yeah. And there's no effort of the crew to figure out why people are mad and like
Yeah.
what the actual like the obsession is over the burn data, which is fine. We can talk about like how the new Star Treks deal with these like season-long mysteries, which I'm a little anxious about how they're going to resolve this. But like they pride themselves on being a research vessel. They pride themselves on being like curious scientists, and like they're not like. And I've said this on the podcast before, but like when they were so happy to find the Federation, I was like, but you don't know any of these people or who they are.
Yeah.
Like this is not resonating or clicking with me because I don't understand how you are all like some of the most brilliant people alive and totally naive about this. And so like clearly they're dropping these crumbs in each episode and like they're going to do something with it, I assume, right? But I'm getting annoyed actually at this point. Being
Yeah.
like, y'all.
Yeah, I hope
They're not the good ones.
I hope it's resolved. I mean, it should really raise a Vulcan eyebrow to see that the species that we've come to love are no longer a part of the Federation, starting with Earth, starting with humans. Andorians are out. Vulcans are out. That's 3 founding members of the Federation right there. They all left. Like, why? The Trill are gone. The Trill are super cool people. Why did they leave? Is it just about the distance, and it's hard to navigate this distance without dilithium and the burn, or is it something else? I don't know.
And if that's the case, who is the Federation? Who
Yeah.
are these people? And also, and again, we've talked about this, like really there becomes no difference between the Federation as a United Nations of some sort, like interplanetary united, we abide by this code of conduct, and Starfleet, which is a military arm.
Right.
Like
Right.
we use that interchangeably often when as like Star Trek fans talking about it, but those are very different. And like
I could see if I'm gonna present this hope, and it's probably not gonna come to pass. But I wonder if this season has some type of commentary about the imperial nature of the Federation, and did they expand too far and collapse under the size of it all, given the burn, and that this large entity could not sustain itself and lost touch with all of the member planets. I don't think that's a commentary we're going to get.
I would pay my entire savings, which is not huge, to see that storyline in Star Trek. Like the reckoning with like what that means for like retconning what our understanding of Star Trek and the Federation, like I think is so fascinating and interesting. I don't think they will do that though, in the same way that like I want the Michael and Book spinoff. Like I want their like buddy cop movie to go on, like Lovers in Space kind of thing. But like Michael's never going to leave the Federation because we can't have a Star Trek show without the Federation.
But don't you think that's kind of I feel like that leads to why the naivety, though, or right, or the naivete. How are you saying that word?
Yeah.
And I would right if I'm thrust 900 years in the future. I feel like I found my people again. I'm going to sort of go in, I would say, relatively blindly, because I have this allegiance to what I think is, my tribe. I would say that it's very easy to overlook those flaws, right? If you think that you've all of a sudden that in the midst of all the other changes in the world around you, that you found something that at least brings you back to where you were and the people that you know and the value system that you hold. I think I'd be pretty blind. I get that like we're critical reviewers or whatever watching of this, but
sure.
I'm putting myself in that position, and I think I would be that way.
I think that's a really good point, that you would be looking to whatever aspect of your identity that you can hold on to. And then I feel like we need to have a discussion of what does the Federation even stand for anymore. The Federation we've known in the 23rd and 24th century is about celebrating diversity, celebrating science, and peaceful exploration. Those are the main qualities. We see bits and pieces here and there. I like in Terra Firma where the Admiral is asking Saru, like, well, what do you think we should do? And he's like, well, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And the Admiral's like, nope, wrong. If your crew is drowning, you stop to help your crew, Captain. And I love that Saru sort of taking these lessons in about what's textbook right versus what's logical versus what's emotional, and what's sort of the integration of those things. But at the same time, we don't see this Federation doing more of the Federation-y kind of things. It can't explore. We haven't seen any ship go anywhere besides the Discovery, and its magical floating nacelles now. So I don't know. I don't know where this is headed, but I think we need to have a real big identity check on what does it mean to be in the Federation in the 32nd century. Yeah.
I actually really appreciated the Admiral giving that advice to Saru, because I was getting a little bit like, okay, the Admiral was this huge piece of shit, which, it made sense totally. Like, I'm not even saying that in his position, that all tracks. It's all very believable that he would be suspicious and cautious and all of that. But he, like, all of a sudden, it just like became the biggest pushover and let them do whatever they wanted. And every week they came to them, it was like, we got a new idea. Let's go do a new thing. And so I did appreciate like the explanation for why he was allowing them to go do this thing. Right. Yeah. That did seem kind of, whatever. I appreciated that a lot. The episode 8, a couple of things. I love the vision of future tech in this world. Like, I love the imagining of it, which we saw a lot of in, I think a couple episodes before. So when we saw the magnetic suit that Giorgio wears, one was super hot. Like, it looked amazing, but I just loved what it did. Right. Like, I like those moments. I really like Hugh's role in this season, where he's just like the firm but compassionate, but like, I'm going to bend to whatever my patient needs, right? Like, I'm gonna be a dick to you if you're a dick to me, and that's how we're gonna get through to you, kind of thing. Or like being really compassionate and soft with other people. And so I like seeing that. One thing that frustrated me is we get to actually meet Osira now. She is like the big bad intergalactic tyrant that controls multiple planets, that controls multiple people, that rules with like an iron fist and blah, 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 blah. Her casting was boggling to me. And this is not even like the quality of acting. Like, I think the actor was fine, but like, she's kind of this like younger-ish kind of hot, like, you are the one that's in charge of all of this shit. Like, I wanted someone a little more rugged, like someone a little more like weathered, like, I don't know. That did not sit with me. The casting was super weird. But one thing I did like about this episode is that we do become in conflict with her, right? We do have that underdog story of like kicking her out of a land in which she has like taken advantage of over and over and over again. And the tension and the conflict there. Like, I agree that between Book and his brother, like, you know, it happened real fast, right? There wasn't a lot of time for the emotional resonance, but I did like what it was trying to do in terms of like, they have been separated by this huge trauma and the choices that they've made about how they are going to exist. And at the end of it, where he was like, you kept our planet alive for 15 years. Like, you did what you had to do. Like, I really appreciated that. I thought that there was, you know, it didn't make me cry, but like it was kind, you know, it was a kind bonding moment for them. And I liked that.
I like the aspects of that storyline. Like, I think the locust invasion was caused by climate change triggered by the burn, which I don't know how that would happen, but I guess we'll find out as we discover about the bird.
And then they get to use brain magic to save the planet,
yes.
And then real magic and science. And I just like, I'm here for this. Talk to the animals. And Book constantly being like, we're just asking them. We can't, like, the consent around their power. I loved that. And I forgot that Book even had that skill because they didn't allow us to see it since like the first episode, you know? So, or the second or whatever. So I liked that.
Yeah, there's a few themes that
it was nerdy.
There's a few themes that they're doing really well here. So there's this theme of isolationism, and that's going throughout the whole series, throughout the whole season. The other theme, there is this aspect of environmentalism. It's a little subtle, but we see that early on with Book and how he is trying to save these. I want to say whales, but that might just be Star Trek 4 coming through me. Was he saving whales or?
Basically.
Yeah, they're like future space whales.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There be whales here, Captain. And there's two more aspects to it that we saw here. So one was the climate change triggered by the burn. But I think what we see in episode 9, is it? Where you have that holographic shrink. Is he a therapist? What? I don't know what he is. The AI hologram dude.
Cronenberg.
Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Him.
That is a character I'm fascinated by. I'm like, oh, I want more of this.
Oh yes,
very much.
I love.
Which also Voyager vibes.
Yes,
like
total Voyager.
When we first get to. Yeah, totally.
He's giving me some major The Doctor.
I got to defend Voyager whenever I can because nobody likes Voyager apparently.
I like Voyager. I like them all. I will defend all of them.
That's true. You do.
Even Star Trek Into Darkness, I can find redeeming things. Anyways, that's a tangent. With Cronenberg, he mentions that this time soldier not only jumped universes but also time. And if you kind of listen to it carefully, it seemed pretty powerful to me that with all of their future tech, with all of the programmable matter and those cool medical bodysuits, they couldn't do anything for him. It's sort of this message of like, don't mess with nature. That he kind of bent things too far, and there's absolutely nothing we can do for him. There's nothing we can do for Giorgio, except we have that supercomputer who tells us to go to this planet. Where there's a caretaker-like thing, So I like that message of nature and conserving and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, one thing that we do have to address is Adira expressing pronouns.
Mm.
So Adira, so we talked about this on the cast before because we already knew that there was going to be a non-binary character. We knew that the actor who plays Adira is non-binary, but the character Adira is referred to as she throughout the entire show until this very moment where they very sort of exasperatedly say they. I go by they, them. Cool. I'm here for this. Because it's 2020 and these are important conversations to have about respecting pronouns and gender identity and all of that. Except this isn't 2020.
Yeah.
This is whatever fucking year into whatever decades into the future we're in. Like are we really talking about pronouns still in this future?
It felt more awkward than the conversations that I'm having today about pronouns. Right? Meaning that I still think there's a disconnect, obviously, between various people, right? Like most of us are on a spectrum of learning, right? To ask for pronouns and be more comfortable with that and everything. And so the fact that, even I get that they're not in the 32nd century or from the 32nd century, but like I would imagine a couple hundred years from now, when discovery's around, it's not this uncomfortable to talk about pronouns, or at least this stilted.
Yeah, so I've really been enjoying Stamets a lot this season, but that moment was like a slingshot back to season 1 Stamets, who's like super annoying and weird and awkward. Like his reaction was like this like half smile, half like I don't know what to say. I've like misgendered you, and then he just sort of ends up saying cool. Is that what he says? Or okay, like it
I don't even remember.
It felt kind of awkward, and I don't know. You kind of wonder if the Federation or if humans would sort of move beyond gendered pronouns at that point. So it does feel like it's 2020 being projected in this moment, or not even 2020, given how awkward it was.
It feels like Star Trek making up for how homophobic it used to be by being much more inclusive. And Discovery is so much more inclusive in a huge number of ways, which I think is a great reflection on our current society and the actual dream of a diverse, inclusive future, right? That kind of thing. But like, it's so stuck in our current contemporary politics that it can't envision future politics the same way it can envision future tech, right? And so like, it's teaching us and reflecting 2020, but like, I wish it was I wish it did it a little smoother. Or I actually, like, just out of the gate, they should have been referred to as they, and everyone just calls them they, and like you would just pick up on it,
I think it's a really good point because, one of the things that this can serve as, and I think it does, Star Trek does this very well typically, but right, it can serve as a template for how to interact this way. And the fact that they made it very much so kind of stodgy at some level was an awkward thing, right? Make it a natural conversation, ask the question, whatever it was, just casually, I wanted it to feel more natural, right? Rather than where I still feel, even in 2020, that it's still it's an active process in my mind, or an active part of our conversations where people have to remember it, not just sort of natural to us.
I think Voyager. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say they've done such a nice job with Stamets and Hugh's relationship throughout the whole series. I've really loved the two of them together. I feel their chemistry. That this moment felt like it was just a little awkward. That being said, as a psychologist, I've worked with a lot of folks who might struggle with anxiety and then might be close to Adira's age and might have a hard time being misgendered and being able to deal with that and correctly communicating their gender in that situation. So I've worked with a lot of folks who have absolutely felt that way and have been so incredibly exhausted and frustrated being so frequently misgendered. So those moments felt real, but they didn't feel real for a future Star Trek.
I get what you're saying. That's a really good point. I hadn't considered that.
Totally. I think that like that's why I keep saying in 2020 it makes sense that that having that representation on a mainstream television show is valuable, but it just felt so weird. And like when you were talking about like doing this a little bit smoother, I was thinking about in Voyager, there's an episode where, because Voyager was a big deal that there was a female captain, even though it was a big deal to us, but like it wasn't a big deal on the show, right?
Yes.
Itself. And so the way that they dealt with that tension was that they interacted with an alien race that was misogynist and shitty. And the alien was like, wait, you listen to this woman? I don't understand. And they're like, yeah, she's the captain. Like that she's, of course we do. And that's it. Like that's how they deal with it. And it's brilliant. Like it's a great way of navigating that space while normalizing her authority in there. So
which is a very
they could have done something more like that.
Yeah, I mean that's a very Star Trek thing. It goes back to the original series when the episode everyone likes to make fun of because it's so social justice, where you have Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, where you have a race that's half black on one side, half white on the other side, and they're like half of the species, it's flipped and they hate each other. And Kirk's like, why do you hate each other? And they're like, well, he's black on the left side and I'm black on the right side. And Kirk's like, that's stupid. Like, you're the same people. That is Star Trek just planting its flag and saying like racism is dumb and this is stupid and we don't stand for that. Star Trek's always done that. It's always been a model of how we should be. I mean, that being said, like, I'm really glad this moment happened. It could have gone smoother. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing I will say.
I'm going to say the one thing that I want. I am deeply appreciative that they're doing this stuff, right? I mean, as weird or as strange as those moments are, like I'm really happy that as a lifelong Star Trek fan that we're seeing a more representative and more progressive Star Trek. Like I want this. I think so many people who love Star Trek love it for this kind of reason, and I think I want to encourage more of it. I mean, I know we're being critical, but I think we're all on the same page. It's like lovingly critical.
For sure.
Yeah,
because all the creators listen to this podcast.
That's right.
I agree. And one more thing I want to echo with that too. At first, I was a little concerned that the transgender character also has a Trill symbiont inside, and so my fear was would those things get convoluted? The fact that they are transgender and also that they have a symbiont, like did things change for them? But I think in that moment, Adira mentions that they've always felt this way or felt this, So
I had the same concern. They did that better. They didn't do what we were worried about them doing, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. Actually, you bring up a really good point. The fact that, the Trill exist and there's already sort of a fluidity of gender within that, it does make it almost more strange at some level, though. I mean, it makes it more comfortable and natural that, of course, you would end up with various hosts and maybe the symbionts that are express a wide spectrum of gender. But I think it's kind of interesting that that should occur very naturally, I would think, for a Trill, right, where the whole experience is kind of progressive at that level, right? If you experience 10 lifetimes, I would imagine, oh yeah, of course.
But they aren't completely Trill. They're human, and so it gets
Gray,
complicated. Yeah.
Well, one thing to note too, though, is Gray is Trill, and Gray is a trans man.
Right.
And Adira is human, and non-binary. So, that's an interesting thing. Like a Trill that is trans. And what does that mean? Because you're already, like you're talking about, have this fluidity. I'm just a little bit frustrated that the trans person existed for an episode and then died and then was at an imaginary voice in the head of the non-binary person. And so the two trans gender fluid characters were paired up and they're in their own storyline. I kind of wish that it wasn't the and now this is the gender corner, of the conversation. But again, this is we're being critical, but also it's very exciting that these characters exist.
I felt similarly to Rika Sharma's character in season 1. She played Landry. I think she was security officer, and then was I was so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's from Battlestar Galactica. She's an amazing character over there. She's also South Asian, so representation. There's 2 of us South Asians in all of Star Trek. There's this one dude who's an admiral in Star Trek 4 asking for help, and then there's Captain Robo in Star Trek 2009, and that's about it. So to see her was cool, and then she was like immediately wiped out, which is one thing I did like about the Mirror Universe episode, episode 9, Terra Firma. She was back on the ship, so that was cool. But yeah, it sucks when you have like one character who is the only representative of an identity, and then they're kind of killed off.
Yeah, totally. And there's a long history of always killing the gays. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see if Gray comes back or if it was like a one-time thing or what have you. But good job so far. Gold star, Star Trek Discovery for trying. The last thing I do want to say is that I am so deeply in love with Michael and Book together. Like, they are so fucking hot. Like, they are just the most beautiful people with the best chemistry. And I'm really glad they didn't like wait till the end of the season for them to actually like have this romance. And I'm not like, cool, romance has got to be in everything. But Michael needed someone that is not Tyler bullshit. And that like the two of them, I love them so much. And I think maybe I loved this episode because every time that they were together and like the cute things that they do, like at the end when Michael was like, I really liked your planet. And he was like, really? Like those weren't the real words that they used, but like it was just, like just this cute couple, like getting to know each other and like meeting your family under duress and all of this stuff. Like the two of them have such sensational chemistry. And I'm so here for it. And please don't ruin this for me because it's all I have in isolation. Okay.
I love them. And,
yeah.
They're such great actors and they're so great together. Yeah. It's really a joy. I mean, that's how I feel about Star Trek Discovery in general. Like everyone on the show is great. And I love all the permutations we're seeing. I love seeing Tilly and Saru. I didn't think I would love it
so much. I love Tilly and Saru together
right?
so
like,
much.
Why are they so good together? Like, if you wrote that down on paper, season 1, that like this ensign and this like first officer are gonna be like serving together in this way, I would have been like, no, that sounds stupid. But Tilly is such a lovely stand-in for us. I feel like so many fans relate to her, and Saru is also in this place of really trying to figure things out, and the two of them together, it's just lovely. All the different character combinations this season have been just delight to see those relationships play out.
I also love, I think, and kudos, a testament to the actor as well, that all the characters are much more on a journey of self-discovery than I feel like we've seen in previous Star Treks.
Yeah.
You see people really figuring themselves out. Because the thing about most of the captains were sort of established always figures, but right, seeing a Saru and a Tilly come into their own, like trying to figure, am I qualified to be a number one? I don't know. I don't feel, like, let me ask the people around me. Like, all that stuff is really real, much more real life, right? I mean, yes. We all get thrust into positions where I don't think we're necessarily, I knew exactly, Academy trained me to be the captain and I'm ready. I think that's a really great part of these characters as well, that kind of path, right? Watching a captain learn to be a captain. That's a really cool thing that I don't think I've seen a whole lot of.
We've never really seen that in Star Trek, and it also feels very now. Like, we've all been on journeys of self-discovery this year. That sounds really cheesy, and it sounds like I made a pun there too. It was not intended that way. But like when you're isolated and alone, and there's so much uncertainty about the future, your focus very much becomes inward. And seeing that mirrored in this season has been just so validating.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, why don't we wrap up by giving our respective ratings for these two episodes? You can rate them on whatever scale you would like, and you can rate them together or separately. We have no boundaries or rules here on our Star Trek podcast. Ali, do you want to go first?
Okay, I'm going to rate
Since you've done
these...
this nonsense with us before.
Yeah, I'm going to rate these in number of parallel universes. And I'm gonna rate The Sanctuary as like 1 one out of the multiverse of universes, just because I was really pretty bored with it, and it's probably one of the really crappy parallel universes. Like maybe the one where Riker has that giant beard and the Borg are everywhere, and maybe it's that one. Terra Firma, I'm giving it three multiverse, three universe, three parallel. I forgot my whole scale. My whole scale is like collapsing in on itself.
It's a lie. It's all a lie.
I give it three out of the multiverse. Just because there's a lot of potential for this episode to be setting up more for Star Trek Discovery, but also more for Star Trek in general. Like we might see stuff from the Kelvin timeline and the new films kind of blending in with the TV shows. So I think that's exciting.
Fuck those films. Your turn.
Okay, I will give. I'll give Sanctuary. I'm gonna give it a Star Trek 3 on the original series movie scale, and I will give. I think I'm actually. I'm gonna switch this. I'm gonna say I'll give Sanctuary Star Trek 5 on the original movie. So yeah, it was actually pretty rough for me. I'm gonna say I'm optimistic that the Terra Firma Part 1 is a Star Trek 3, that we're about to get a Star Trek 4 right after this. I'm hoping for Part 2 to really come home and just make me laugh. So.
All right. Okay, well, I'm going to give Episode 8, The Sanctuary, 7 out of 10 Michael and Book relationships.
Right.
I honestly, it's purely because I was so happy to see them together and like doing their thing together. And because I do like the sort of like kicking the badass out of the bad tyrant out of the country planet thing. That works for me. Episode 9, I'm gonna give 200 scary worm monsters out of 200 because they're bad, and the higher the scale is on this one, the worse the episode is. That worm, that penis looking thing.
Oh,
yeah, what
terrible.
the fuck, man? It was so bad. So yeah, basically this episode can just be eaten by a stupid worm. All right. Thank you both so much for joining us. Do you want to plug anything or shout out anything that you're doing or places that people can find you?
After you.
Yeah, my name. I don't know why I'm saying my name again. My name is Ali. I want to plug myself in my name. I like my name a lot. No, if you go to youtube.com/The Psych Show, that gets you to my YouTube channel where I celebrate mental health and make psychology fun and easy to understand. And you can find me on social media at Ali Mattu. That's what I was going to do. That's why I was saying my name.
Perfectly. Bobak?
I don't really have anything to plug. I guess I'm just excited for we're about to land another rover on Mars in February. So that's, the Perseverance rover. Excited for that. And
will there be a puzzle that I can put together of the rover so I can learn about it?
When we get that first selfie back, then we can make a puzzle out of it.
That's hell yeah, I'm gonna hold you to that.
It's got some great cameras, so we really should see some beautiful pictures. We already very fortunate, but they should be spectacular with this rover. And you can find me on social at Tweets Out Loud, all one word.
If the first rover was the size of the original Enterprise, how big is this new rover?
Oh man, I wish I remember the Star Trek ship scales.
The Enterprise D is big. The Enterprise E is pretty long, but not as big.
What is the Into Darkness, the giant ship?
Oh, that thing's real big.
I feel like that's where we're at right now. I mean, the first one was
real
the size
big
of a microwave.
Really scientific scale.
Yeah, we had a microwave, and now we're at a golf cart. So
it was a
pretty big leap.
Size.
Yeah,
it's that small. I remember that was like one of my favorite childhood memories. Was seeing that rover land. Well, not seeing it land, but seeing the images come back.
Yeah.
I don't I think space is cool, but I don't know a whole lot about the things that we do in space. But a friend of mine used to work at SpaceX, and so he would send me videos of the launches. And so there was one that just happened recently, And I was like, cool. Like, I was like, okay, whatever. And then I was like, I need some context for why this thing is going up and coming back down and exploding and how that was a success. And so like providing all of the context of it, I was like, oh, this is fucking cool. And then I watched it like 3 times, right? Because you're like, it's such a, I think space travel and all that we do around that and exploration is so fascinating, but it's so far removed from anything that we like know on a day-to-day, like the science of it and understanding how it works. And like, you really kind of have to dig into the context of it and not just, watch Star Trek sometimes to understand it. So thank you for what you do. All right, y'all. Thank you, both of you, for joining us. We'll put all of those links in the show notes. And that's it for this week. So join us in 2 weeks when we'll be joined again by Steve Shives and author Annalee Newitz to talk about episodes 10 and 11. Bye.
Bye.